Introductions. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews, a YouTube channel dedicated to tabletop gaming hobby, and today we have Sandy Petersen with us from Petersen Games. Sandy, if you could take a moment please to introduce yourself for people who may not know you.
Howdy, I'm Sandy Petersen. The only full-time job I've had as an adult, except for a brief 2 years teaching at a university, is that of game designer. I started out doing mostly role-playing games with Chaosium in the 80s. I then went to video games, where I did some pretty famous video games from 1988 to 2012. And then I left all that behind and founded a board game company, which I am now the founder of, which has done a number of generally successful asymmetrical or cooperative board games. I'm best known for the role-playing game Call of Cthulhu, for the video games Doom and Age of Empire, and for the board games Cthulhu Wars and Planet Apocalypse.
So what all did you do before just forming your board gaming company? What were your big projects that you did that you're most famous for?
Well, Doom 2, and Quake are probably the biggest ones, because those were our team was like 10 to 15 people, and I did most of the levels for Doom and Doom 2. For Quake, I did about a fourth of the levels. I also was responsible for like naming the levels and naming the monsters and figuring out things like that. But so that's probably put me on the landscape. I also was involved with Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization, before I moved on to id Software. So that would be back in the like 1991 or something. So that's to my credit. I then moved to the Ensemble Studios company. I worked for 11 years doing Age of Empires, Age of Empires 2, Age of Empires 3, Halo Wars, lots of strategy, RTS games, real-time strategy games, which is where I learned to balance non-symmetrical things, because that was my job for 11 years. So then I carried that into my board games, where I've been doing board games since 2013. Cthulhu Wars, Planet Apocalypse, The Gods War, Evil High Priest, Invasion of the Brood, and a bunch that are not yet released, but soon will be.
So I personally have actually, without knowing, I've actually been a fan of a lot of your designs for many years. I grew up on Age of Empires, Civilization, classic Doom, of course, Wolfenstein, all those other ones that were kind of semi-based on it a lot, but I actually grew up on a lot of those designs. I actually played Call of Cthulhu when I was younger. I was actually a big proponent of RPGs. I got sucked into the RPG hole probably in the late 80s, and I probably played maybe about 75 to 100 different RPGs, some of the most obscurest, some of the most well-known ones, from ones that you may have never heard, such as Aftermath, to more ones that you've heard, like such as Dungeons & Dragons, Palladium, a lot of the other RPGs, of course, Call of Cthulhu, a lot of the old ones. And then in the 90s, I kind of got out of RPGs and got into video games really heavily, started playing lots of video games as a fan, and then, say probably early 2000s, got back into board games and RPGs. So that's kind of where I kind of went through that. So I have seen a lot of different board games and PC games and RPGs in my time. So,
well, I was living for 8 years. I was living the role-playing world. I mean, I did work on Arkham Horror in that time, but that's the old Chaosium Arkham Horror, which was completely revamped by Lanius and Fantasy Flight in the 90s. I'm very proud of Call of Cthulhu because it really was the first Lovecraft game. And when I did it, Lovecraft was like vanishingly obscure. I mean, literally everyone I knew who'd heard of Lovecraft had heard about him because I had told them, about him. But thanks to Call of Cthulhu and Stuart Gordon's movies, Lovecraft, fame moved through the gaming community and the film community and kind of went out and spread out. And now it's, it's like an industry almost.
It truly is. It really is. It's amazing how You look at what H.P. Lovecraft did many, 100 years now, almost 100 years ago now at this point, and it just...
Not quite 100 years, but close.
What are we looking about? 85, 90, right? Am I?
He died in 1937.
1937, so 85-ish years ago.
He wrote Call of Cthulhu in 1927.
Wow.
So
that's a long time. But it's amazing how it kind of faded into obscurity, and then it came way back into the mindset, and now you're seeing a lot more through media, movies. But it's interesting, if you actually listen...
The next Comic-Con convention was, they gave me an award for, I guess, greatness and Lovecraftness, and their claim was that Lovecraft was now known because of Call of Cthulhu and Stuart Gordon's movies like Reanimator, right. Because it wasn't before then. And I mean, he somehow got known anyway, but the fact is we had all the gaming people, role-playing people playing Call of Cthulhu. Like, it was the main game they played at TSR in the 80s. They didn't play D&D, they played Call of Cthulhu.
Really?
And I know this for a fact because they told me. At conventions, they would all come over and like try to trade me their stuff for more Call of Cthulhu things. And maybe not everyone there, but everyone I met from DSR was playing it. And then, of course, Stuart Gordon's movies came out about 5 years later. Reanimator, From Beyond, Dagon. And then those went through, like, the film nerd community.
Right.
And so, they kind of filtered through society. And I think one of the reasons that Call of Cthulhu was so successful as a role-playing game is because it was totally contrarian. Like, you didn't get better over time, you got worse. You didn't go and fight the monsters and get XP. You tried to solve mysteries. The big confrontation was like taking a dump truck to fill up the cave with cement or something, right? It was pretty wild. It also had the advantage that because it was not so testosterone driven, more women were willing to play it usually than D&D. So like
that totally makes
usually
sense.
Back in the day it was like 90% men, and Call of Cthulhu was like 75% men. But like in Japan now, where I've learned from Chaosium and from going there in 2019, it's the number one role playing game in Japan. It's bigger than D&D by far.
Wow, that is amazing.
70% of the players are women.
Wow, that is awesome. Yeah,
there's more copies of Call of Cthulhu being played in Japan than the rest of the world combined. So the average Call of Cthulhu player is an 18 to 35-year-old Japanese woman.
That's actually pretty darn cool. It's kind of cool to see how different cultures accept different things. They change up things and how they actually influence the cultures, because you see, for us in America, the big thing we have is the Michael Bay style things with lots of big explosions. And you see that with our RPGs, very action-based. But you go to other cultures, story, evolution, conflict become much different things. You see that just in our media versus their media, their film versus our film. I mean, some of the best films I've actually watched are foreign films, just because how they treat the subject matter completely different than us.
Obviously, there's action-packed Japanese. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was finished. Go ahead.
It's obviously action-packed Japanese movies, but yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I watched a lot of foreign movies too because I like not knowing who's going to live or die from the first 5 minutes of the movie, which Hollywood somehow isn't able to do.
No.
You watch a movie, oh, that's the guy who's going to survive, or whatever. But my whole idea in Call of Cthulhu was that I figured that if you wanted to go and fight the monsters and get XP and get stronger and fight a bigger monster and get more XP, and if you want to go through that loop, then literally every other role-playing game did that. But if you wanted something alien to that and different, then Call of Cthulhu was kind of the only game in town, at the time. And even now, there's still most games are the cycle. I'm not saying the cycle's bad. It's very compelling. I play games that use that cycle myself quite a bit. But Call of Cthulhu is like the other way to do things. So
it is, and it's interesting. I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit later because there's some cool topics I would love to talk to you about. But I am actually a huge fan of the less standard RPGs. One of my favorite RPGs is actually Dread. I don't know if you ever heard of Dread, the RPG.
I think I have a copy of it upstairs on my shelf, but I don't think I've played it.
Basically, the idea is all the mechanics and everything is done with a Jenga set. So if you do anything in the game, the person who's in charge of the game... I'm sorry?
Look, that sounds really weird.
Yeah. So basically, everything and anything that anybody wants to do is going to be a pull from a Jenga tower. And depending on the stress and the circumstances that are going on, the person who's running the game, GM, keeper, whatever you want to call it, their basic idea is they're going to tell you to make anywhere from 1 to 3 pulls from the Jenga tower. And if you succeed in what you're doing. If you fail, you've knocked over the Jenga tower, and you know that you're the next to pass on. You're going to be the next person to be the next victim. It may not happen immediately, unless the story is really good for that point. But that's the whole concept and the mechanics of the game, is how the Jenga tower changes things up. Another good example is, I don't know if you've heard of Beyond the Wall, which is a less action-packed RPG and much more of a fantasy with a stronger Tolkien feel to it, where one or two bad guys is pretty much going to take you out. You don't have the chances of surviving the big encounters where you're fighting 50 orcs. That's the circumstance you're not going to survive. You're going to have a lot of problems if you try that.
Well, that makes sense.
Question for you.
I mean, mostly, I'll admit that most of the role-playing games I play are role-playing games that I designed, because, in a sense, one of my game design things, and it's not a rule exactly, it's that I design games I want to play. So if I want to play a certain kind of game and it doesn't exist, then I will go and design it. So I wanted to play Call of Cthulhu, and I designed it. And so, of course, that's the game I would play then. I wanted to play Cthulhu Wars, and there wasn't a game like that, so I had to make it. So it does mean that I'm limited in some ways. Like, I really like World War II and World War II games, but there's so many good World War II games that I've never felt any impulse to make one. So I haven't. Except
for Dinosaur 1944. Where'd you come from the inspiration for that?
Okay, so if you're a kid in the 60s, then one of the main sources of toys you have are bags of brightly colored plastic dinosaurs and bags of green or gray army men. Right? So you've got these plastic army men and you got these plastic dinosaurs, and you're 8 years old. What are you going to do? They're going to fight. Everyone I knew had their army men fighting dinosaurs.
That's actually true. I mean, that's pretty much the thing. I mean, I remember having little plastic miniatures, and you would fight with them, and, you'd have a heck of a lot of fun with them. That's the cool thing to do. I mean, even when I was growing up. So I'm a child of the 70s, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's still a thing, right? You get dinosaur figures and army men. Maybe army men aren't as popular now because who knows, right? But you'd fight with them. And then also, there was a lot of comics at the time that were basically about World War II soldiers fighting dinosaurs. There was like a range of comics by Marvel and DC that, Sergeant Rock is shooting a pterodactyl or something. So it was a thing. And so actually what happened is I'd Orcs Must Die, which we'd also done the board game version of, was the license was running out. We didn't want to renew it. And so we said, we kind of like the game system of the two teams that fought. And so I decided, look, I'll take the Orcs Must Die system and I'll have it be dinosaurs versus army men. So we did, because I always wanted to do a dinosaurs versus army men game. So that's where that came from. But it's not a World War II game like, Battle of the Bulge or Mid-War or something.
No. Actually, it's interesting. When I was talking to Arthur, he actually said that he liked World War II stuff, and he was talking about a game design that he's kind of working on that was, I think he said, mummies versus tanks, if I remember correctly.
So Arthur said, what's your next? So my go-to thing whenever Arthur says, what's your next game? One of my go-to things is, I need mummies versus tanks. And then he's like, that's a great idea. I did it because it's so stupid. Right? Maybe someday it will exist because it's so stupid. But that was just my joke, right? Sometimes jokes become reality. I don't know. In your copy of Planet Apocalypse, did you get so much of it that you got the team captain marker figure?
I don't think I got the team captain. I bought it at retail. So
okay.
I'm not a huge Kickstarter person. I would say only about 10% of my collections from Kickstarter. So usually when it comes to Kickstarter type stuff, I usually am more of a retail thing because I like supporting retail. That's just kind of how I am.
No, I agree. I try to buy my things retail when I can. Although obviously I love Kickstarter because, I mentioned it because we did my I don't care about bling like first person. I know it sounds sucky coming from me because all my games have this. I don't care about plastic markers for victory points or plastic first. I know I have them all, but my team says you got to do all these weird things out of plastic. So I like the figures. Yeah, I know. I'm not. Yes, I know, right? So they say do this. I said, but I don't. And then they make me do it. I don't. Custom dice aren't my thing. But the team says, but we'll make a profit on it. A small profit, but so anyway, they said we need a plastic first player team captain marker for Planet Apocalypse. What should we do? And in my bitterness, I said, why don't you do a figure of a demon with my face on it? So they did.
Oh, I did not realize that. That's actually funny.
And it's It's not even a cool demon. It's the Grillus. The first circle demon.
Right.
It looks like a chicken.
I don't mean to laugh about that, but that's quite comical, actually. So, no, that's actually extremely funny. So, I know you've been a board game designer for a long time. You've been a designer of many, many things. What is your favorite non-Petersen Games board game? Design-wise, mechanic-wise, or play-wise, or just most enjoyable? What would that be?
So here's the thing. If you tell me, if you ask me what is your favorite food, I would probably say something like lobster. But if I actually ate lobster every day, I would get sick of it and pine for something else. So my favorite game is different from day to day because there's no one game I want to only play at the expense of everything else. You know what I mean? But among my favorite games are World in Flames, which is a World War II game. I really like that. I quite like A History of the World. I like Eclipse. I like, I look back here. My wife really likes The Ticket to Ride, so I play Vinci. Boy, this is a great game.
Vinci is an absolute classic that is so underrated due to Small World.
So good.
Such a great game.
Small World is not the same quite exactly.
No.
We need Vinci back.
We do.
So
if somebody republished Vinci again, that would be awesome. But at least people can play Small World, which is fairly simple.
Squad Leader also I quite like. I wish someone would republish that. For a while they were talking about doing it, but then they took the money and ran, so that was sad. Squad Leader is a card game of World War II combat, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. So
it's I liked that a lot. Not Squad Leader. Up Front.
Oh, Up Front, yes. Up Front definitely needs to be reprinted.
Games that no one can play because there's literally a loose leaf binder full of the rules.
Right.
Let's see. I like Mary Nostrum.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Terra Mystica.
I love Terra Mystica.
What?
I love Terra Mystica. It's one of the most underappreciated games.
It's great. There is. I like Hannibal quite a bit. I like the Napoleonic Wars by not Decision Games. GMT, is that what it is? The card based war games they do a Civil War game, which I like. They do let's see, I'll just go here and look for it. I like this quite a bit. Paths of Glory.
That's a good one. That's a classic one.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of got into gaming as a kid via war games because we didn't have good non-war games at the time. I mean, it was like Monopoly and Stratego and they all sucked, right? So when I wanted to play a good board game, I'd go get some Avalon Hill thing. So I'd play, Blitzkrieg or something. And then eventually in the 80s, the Germans invented good board games that weren't war games. So then I started moving into those. But a lot of the foundational games I learned were what we used to call ourselves grognards back in the day, where you play a war game. And so I play a lot of those, but I also play a lot of other types of things. I like games I like Dungeon Twister, I like Erland and Ursoup.
You are mentioning a lot of games that I really enjoy. Dungeon Twister and Dungeon Twister Prison, absolutely fantastic modifications, not modifications, but spins on the classic game of chess. Is basically, it almost feels like you're playing the classic game of Archon from the PC mixed with chess, and that's basically what Dungeon Twister is. So that's a fantastic game. I loved Avalon Hill. I have a lot of classic Avalon Hill games on my shelf. Just some great games.
Potatoes, I like.
Yeah.
Well, okay, sorry. I call it Space Potatoes, but it's Merchant of Venus. You guys call it Space Potatoes because that's what, why.
Yes.
You played it.
Yes.
Evo was pretty good. I love the bidding system in Evo.
Evo, yes. EVO, yep, I know that one. Actually, you speak of Merchants of Venus. I actually have a signed copy from the original designer that I have in my special section, my board game collection, because it's actually signed by him on the box cover. It's wrapped in plastic. So I can kind of keep that as my, our special collection type thing. We all are collectors in a way, right?
Yeah, we are. Let's see. I like Revolution. I reviewed it for Board Game Geek, in which I pointed out that it doesn't feel like a revolution at all, but it's still fun to play.
Actually, I have read one of your reviews before. The one review I read of yours that actually made me buy the game was Kingsport Festival. I had to look up and remember the name of the game. It's right there on my shelf. Kingsport Festival.
Oh yeah, the Kingsport one, which is And did you agree with my review after you played it?
I did. It was actually a game that I enjoyed quite a bit. It actually takes the classic dice placement game the game is based on and turns it into kind of like a different play.
It's Kingsbird or something, right?
Kingsbird, yep. Kingsbird.
Yeah, Kingsbird.
But I enjoyed the fact of how the great old ones all changed up the way the game played. It made it feel different enough to be its own standalone game, which I really enjoyed.
Yes.
So as somebody likes naval stuff, did you ever play Nemo's War?
Which one?
Nemo's War.
I have not played Nemo's War.
Do you do any solo gaming at all?
I don't do a lot because I'm usually, when I feel like playing a solo game by myself, I have some solo games and play them, but usually when I get one out, I play it with someone else anyway. We both work together on trying to solve it, So a lot of my solo gaming is on computers because I spent so many years doing computer games. So I'll do My Time in Portia or something. But I liked what's the gnome game where they're on the sub?
Red October. Is it no? Not is it Red October?
No, it's November, right?
Red November, yes. Red November. Red October is the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Red November,
which is great. No, I like that. I really like the way they did the time thing for the gnomes, where you'd move ahead, then you didn't get a turn for a while because other guys are doing things. I thought that was very cunning.
Yeah, it is actually a cool design. There's some really good, interesting mechanics that really seem to match the mechanics of the game to make the games better.
Yeah. There's also games I like, not so much because they're a great game, but because they're a game I can get out and play with the grandkids easily. So like Rattlebones, a Woolly Bully. I just like a few weeks ago, my 6-year-old grandson was like, "I want to play a game with you, Grandpa," and he was getting games that I didn't think he would enjoy. So I said, "Let's play this," and I got Yggdrasil.
Interesting.
And he loved it. And then his older brother played. They're all playing it. And then today they jumped me and made me go play Yggdrasil with them again. So, and they've lost it the time when they play it, but they don't care. It's so fun. They like being the Viking gods. They like, beating up on. Have you played it?
Yes, I have. It's actually, I haven't played in a long time, but it was actually, I don't own a copy.
I'm not saying it's a great game, but the grandkids play it with me. So that kind of makes it better. They like Zularetto. And of course, when people come over and say, "Let's play a game," and they don't know anything about games, then I get something really simple. I usually get Monster Factory. It's my go-to game for non-gamers because everyone understands how to play it.
Right. Actually, I got my kids to play Caverna when they were really young because of Minecraft. I don't know if you ever played Caverna, but they saw me playing with my friends, and they got so interested because they're going, "This looks just like Caverna." And I'm like, "Well, let's play it." And they actually loved the game of Caverna for that reason.
Oh, I really like Mary and Mr. Darcy.
Never played it. I've heard of it, never played it. I hear that's an interesting one.
Well, it's much better if you've read Jane Austen, which I did for the first time in my 30s, and then was sorry I hadn't done it before because she writes absolutely perfect English. And by that, I mean that if you read a sentence by Jane Austen and you look at it and try to think of some way to make it better by taking words out, there's no way you could modify it that would make it better. It's already the correct thing. And they're funny. They aren't like these ponderous things you go through. They're like quite engaging. So even if you are like an old bitter man like me, Jane Austen is good. And then playing the card game is hilarious, right? Because you're all trying to marry the right guy, and of course you're all pretending to be like Regency maidens, and it's that's part of the fun.
Right. What is your own?
Good games. You asked me for my favorite game, and I've named like a million games. And what can I say? That's my approach. I like a million games. Civilization, best economic game ever made.
We talking about Advanced Civilization, or are we talking about the remake, or are we talking about the New Dawn that's from Fantasy Flight Games?
I have not done the New Dawn. I've played Mega Civilization, and I played the old Advanced Civilization, and they are sadly too long to play, so you can never finish it, but they're fun.
They are.
I also, and really, Twilight Imperium is the same way. It takes like forever to play, but it's fun. So in fact, part of the reason I did Hyperspace, which by the way is totally available on Tabletop Simulator if you want to try it, is because I wanted to have a 4X game which had all 4 X's and didn't take 9.5 hours to play.
So,
which is how long my last game of Twilight Imperium was.
Right. So one of the things I appreciate about you about a designer, there's 2 things that you do that I greatly appreciate as a designer. One, you appreciate that not every single board game group ends at 4. My personal board game group goes all the way up to 7 people. So the fact that you make games that, my average size is usually 5, but I can get your games to the table versus lots of games that end up being dust collectors on my shelf because I have 5 people over, and I'm not going to tell somebody that they need to go home because we're going to play this one game. So that's one thing I greatly appreciate. The other thing I really appreciate is a lot of your designs are a little bit faster. You kind of weed out some of the blasé mechanics that feel like more upkeep versus actual mechanics themselves. So those are 2 things I've always appreciated about your designs.
I hate waiting for my turn. So in Cthulhu Wars, I mean, one of the obstacles to selling Cthulhu Wars originally is people look at this giant game that takes up the entire space. I'm not able to do the small game thing very well. All my games are these acreage huge, but people thought, oh, well, that probably takes about 8 hours to play. I said, no, it takes like 90 minutes. And they were like, how can that be? And they played it, and it was fast, and they were amazed because it actually plays fast, which I was always very happy with. One of the things I like about Hyperspace, which like I said is not out yet, is that I was able to completely destroy the turn structure in it. So what happens in Hyperspace, you get to take 3 actions, then it's the next guy's turn. And so if you want to produce, then pick that for one of your actions. If you don't want to produce, then do other things. So it's very straightforward, and usually it's pretty quick. I mean, sometimes there's a guy with analysis paralysis, but usually it's pretty clear what you want to do. I want to move, I want to attack, I want to build, whatever it is. I need to, and then you can never do everything you want, which is always a good thing.
Sound of a good game.
One of the other things.
That's the sound of a good game design, where you feel like you have lots of decisions, and there's never one path that you always have to take whenever you play the game. That's one thing I don't like is games that basically say, "This is your optimal move. If you don't do your optimal move, then it's why you playing." Right.
Bad. Right. Yeah, I like having choices. I mean, that's Cthulhu Wars is based on that. Planet Apocalypse is based on that. One of the dire things about many co-op games, as I'm sure you're aware, is that there's some guy who appoints himself the game policeman and tells everyone what to do. And in Planet Apocalypse, though that can still happen, it's less common. I think partly because it's never quite clear what the best thing is you should do, and also because of the team captain guy who decides who the monsters attack and who gets all the courage. And so what I've noticed is that the people who are most relentlessly game policemen love the idea of having to obey the team captain, and so they don't try to boss people around during the other people's turn as much. It's like psychological, I think.
And one of the best things about Planet Apocalypse, if I can talk about your own design for a second there, is the fact that the more advanced maps actually make it less of a bonus to be the person who tells everybody what else to do. I mean, the basic map, it's more of a simpler map. But as you start getting those more advanced maps, it's not a good idea anymore, and you actually have to have everybody kind of branching down their own paths. Otherwise, you're not going to win.
Yeah, figure out what they're going to do. Yeah, I mean the game is ultimately simple. It's like you can each turn you could move and fight, not necessarily in that order. That's about it. But the character advancement, the tower defense, I was kind of the 2 things I thought were most innovative were the tower defense aspect and the character advancement. I thought was cool.
Okay.
When I was in the year and a half I spent making it, so I kind of hang my hat on something that I thought was fun, and that was what I thought was cool there. And then I kept hoping it would be a success, and it has been at least a critical success. So.
I would agree with you. It's a really great design. It's one of the games that I have not had a bad experience playing with it yet. So now that we talk a few of your designs, what is your own personal favorite design that you've ever created? PC or board game or both?
The design I'm most proud of in PCs is the War Chiefs expansion for Age of Empires 3, which I had to fight all the way up to Microsoft to get approved. And everyone that played it from the moment they got the Indian characters loved them. So that was good. The board game I'm most proud of is it might be Cthulhu Wars, but I'm really proud of Planet Apocalypse and Hyperspace 2, so it's hard to pick one of those kids. Right now, the one I'm I would probably say Planet Hyperspace now because I'm really wishing it was out. It is not. So I'm pining for it more than Planet Apocalypse and Cthulhu Wars. But I'm pretty I mean, if I were to say Cthulhu Wars, it would be because it's kind of the founder of the feast for my family because it established Petersen Games and made us there. But those are my emotional attachment to the fact that it's paid my way for the last 10 years is maybe masks my true feelings about it. You know what I mean?
So,
but there's a reason I have a giant oil painting of Cthulhu on the wall where other people would have a black velvet Elvis or dogs playing poker. You know, it's like.
So I have a question for you. This is something I've always been curious about. This is my own personal thing. Why the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft? Where did your love for the mythos come from? Where does it stem from? I mean, I know Doom was its own thing, and that's where you kind of got your PC start a little bit there, but where did your love for the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft actually come from?
So what happened is that I was 8 years old, and we just moved. My dad was a science fiction fan from way back. I mean, he used to read the old pulps and stuff, and a big science fiction fan. And so but in those days, science fiction wasn't so clearly set off as a separate genre. We hadn't been subdivided as much, so he had all kinds of things. So I would go into the basement and look at the big boxes full of books that he had and look for interesting things to get. And I got this book called The Dunwich Horror and Other Stories, published in 1942. It was published for soldiers, American soldiers abroad. It was part of they had this thing where they would print books and send it to the soldiers. So I don't know why a soldier had better morale because he read Lovecraft, but that was one of the books they made for. I got this book from 1942, and I looked at it. I was 8, right? So it had a lot of shorter stories. It wasn't just one long novel, so that was better for me as a kid. So I went and read them, and I'd already read Poe and other things, and I really liked Lovecraft. I just was amazed by by this thing. I said, "Wow, I wonder if you read more Lovecraft." But I couldn't find more Lovecraft. There was none anywhere. And then that book got misplaced, and I didn't see it for 3 more years. But I remembered it. I kept looking for Lovecraft. Finally found one little paperback that had a few of the stories that overlapped. Also, the original book, the introduction, which I think was written by August Derleth, talked about Lovecraft quite a bit and talked about stories that weren't in that book, like The Thing on the Doorstep. And The Thing on the Doorstep was a great name. I go, what is that about? I want to know. And finally, when I was 14, when I was 12, I found the original book again. Then when I was 14, I found out that the local college had Lovecraft books, the Arkham House books. So I'd go check them out like every 3 months. And I knew I was only going to check them out because there was never any other names on the card, that went in the back of the book. And then when I was at my last year of high school, the college found out that these were actually valuable books, and so they've locked them away so high school kids couldn't get them out anymore because it was first edition Arkham House, So, but just that year, my dad and mom took me on a trip to New York City. And he had to go to a doctor's convention. He's a doctor. And so I went to a bookstore, and Valentine had just published the Lovecraft collection in paperback. And so I begged them to buy it, and they bought it. And then I spent my entire vacation in the awesome city of New York in the hotel room reading Lovecraft.
That's awesome.
And so part of the reason I love Lovecraft is probably because it took me literally 10 years to find him from the first impact. So I was like one of those guys who's trying to get a copy of the Necronomicon. I must find Lovecraft. And then I found a few movies that had him, the Dunwich Horror, Die Monster Die, The Shuttered Room. There was a few movies, but they were like not great. And so then I would tell my friends how awesome he was. And every once in a while I could find anything Lovecraftian. I thought it was cool. And then finally in 1980, Chaosium got me to write the Call of Cthulhu book, and I was so excited to turn it because I've been playing role-playing games since first edition D&D. That's when I got it. My friend, I would just entered college, and so I was playing it in 1973 and 74. So right off the bat, I'm playing role-playing games. And I thought of putting this into having Lovecraft in a role-playing game was really exciting.
So what was Chaosium's first RPG then?
RuneQuest.
Oh, that's right. I don't know why I had a blank on that. That's absolutely right. So RuneQuest came out, and then the Call of Cthulhu was their second one then, or?
I'm not sure if it was the second. They had a game called Worlds of Wonder somewhere in there. Then there was Stormbringer was older too.
Oh yes, okay, that's right. So that was actually a classic.
So these 2 games for Call of Cthulhu, and then later on they did Super World and stuff. But they even did a Prince Valiant game. Instead of dice, you used coins. You flip pennies.
Interesting. So that's a little bit different then. So since we're talking about H.P. Lovecraft, can we talk about Cthulhu Wars? The good news is that the new Onslaught has some good positive movement for people watching the Discord. It looks like it's all packaging up and everything like that. So
the new Onslaught is completely printed. It is sitting in. It's printed. It's collated. It's in the boxes. And then there's 3 waves of it being picked up and shipped. And the first wave was the German edition by Petersen Games. And they picked that up. And the second wave, sadly, is Chinese and Russian and French. And the Russian one is especially problematic, but apparently they can ship it from China to Russia, so the Russians can get it to distract them from their awesome war, I guess. And it's not like our partners in Russia that publish the game are responsible for these adventures, right?
Right.
So, and the American ones, the English ones, are going to be ready in about a week.
Oh, awesome.
To be shipped, but they're all going to be packed on ships and sent off in August.
That is awesome.
According to the factory.
That is awesome.
So it's really, truly finished and ready to go. And I am very happy about that.
That's going to make a lot of people very happy, very excited, who have been waiting a long, long time for this.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's all I can say is that I have been waiting with tenterhooks as much as anyone, because I want to play my games. I want to see my games. I want to hold my games. And of course, the fact that my business was hit bad because we didn't have those games gives me like other reasons to want them out. I know there's people that have thought of made up conspiracy theories about how I don't really want the games come out, but it's just not so. There's reasons it hasn't come out, and there's possible, they can argue that I made mistakes or not, whatever. But my goal has always been to get these out, and Cthulhu Wars is out. And then, as I said in my discussion, my plan is Cthulhu Wars will be out, and then we'll go to the next game of the stalled campaigns. And it's 99% chance is going to be Planet Apocalypse or Hyperspace. We have to evaluate it over the next month or so and see which one of those is the better one to move on now. But we're not going to be delaying the movement to make that decision, because they're all one of the good things that came out of Petersen Games. Well, maybe not good, but we our work that we done up till the point where we had to lay off most of our team left us with 17 games fully designed and laid out. Some of them small, some of them big, but they're ready to go. So we don't have to do more playtests or design on them. We just have to pull the scratch together to do them. And of course, one of the ways of getting the money to do them is first Cthulhu War goes out. Most of the money from that is going to go in whatever the next game is. And then we keep doing these one at a time until they're all out. And in the meantime, we may also do some other new things, but the new things won't be figure heavy, super expensive stuff. Like TerraPass is finished. It's just cardboard with D6s. So it's comparatively cheap to do. So instead of slowing down the other products, it will actually probably speed them up, because it'll be done at a different factory, and money from that we can use later on to help ship the big figure-heavy games. So
you actually mentioned the conspiracy theorists earlier, and I don't understand the conspiracy theorists because I've actually been following Petersen Games since, I think, 2015. I missed your very, very first Kickstarter. And actually, my review copy of Cthulhu Wars that you see, my very first review I ever did for Cthulhu Wars, was actually a friend's copy who bought it, who said, put this on your channel because it looks so great. So I've been around, and I remember what you've actually done, a lot of the sacrifices you've made. And if people understand the sacrifices you've made, those conspiracy theories don't make a lick of sense, because why would somebody do all those things that you've done if they just want to follow those conspiracies?
I literally put 80% of my life savings and retirement money into getting Cthulhu Wars and those things shipped over the last year. So now I have to get them all out because my retirement just went away. But the good news is it looks like they're coming out, and then in sequence, and that'll be that makes me really happy, because I like seeing my games in print. I'm really happy with the new figures we're doing for Cthulhu Wars. You know about the secret thing we have for Cthulhu Wars. I'm happy that the Cthulhu Wars duels have done well.
I've enjoyed duels a lot. I think you did a great job with that one.
The next one is Cthulhu War Duels Miskatonic.
Which is yellow and purple, right?
Yellow and purple.
Yes, that's going to be awesome.
And it's in Miskatonic, one of the medieval metaphysics building of Miskatonic University. It has the color out of space.
So I was actually going to ask this question later because this is something I was really interested in. But since you brought up the topic now, I'm going to ask now. What cool mechanics can we look at from the Miskatonic map? Because the last one, Extinction, had the Dark Towers? Is it Dark Towers? Correct me if I'm wrong. Dark Towers.
Flying polyp towers.
So the Dark Towers mechanic was really cool because it kind of gave you almost a primeval map feel from the classic original Kickstarter, which I thought
that was the intent.
Which is awesome. So what mechanic is going to be in the Miskatonic?
Well, Miskatonic kind of is inspired by the Dreamlands map. So on the upper floor of the building, there are lunatics, grad students who've gone nuts, who are running around causing trouble, and they act somewhat like the Zoogs. And what you're trying to do is you can win by the normal way, but you can also assemble an experiment and complete it. And if you complete the experiment, then you instantly win. But the grad students are trying to mess up your experiment. Then if you go in the basement, there's no madmen there because they're all dead because the color out of space is there rampaging around. And it will come and it's the color out of space. You can't fight it, right? It just is a terrible thing. And the color out of space also is messing up with your experiments. But if you can get these, so they have two places of experiments, it's sort of like controlling the citadels in Dreamlands. But it's experiments, and you have pictures of them. And anyway, that's what's going on there as you move upstairs and downstairs and are doing things. The map is pretty awesome looking. Our artists kind of had a lot of fun drawing the interior of a university. So that's what it's based on. And of course, all the other guys work in it,
So is this going to be a two-piece map also, since you're talking about upstairs and downstairs, or is it just going to be how the... Oh, nope. Very nice.
Nope. Upstairs and downstairs, like Dreamlands.
Just like the Dreamlands.
And then the next map, Caverns, is actually based on the library map.
Nice.
Except instead of spell books, there's crystals you're trying to accumulate, but because you're in these deep underground caverns.
I mentioned this to Arthur, and I know the idea was, sorry, we can't do it, but I thought it would have been fantastic if there was a way to buy just the maps for people who have, the big boxes like I do in the background here. For people who have the big boxes, actually just buy the maps separately, because I would buy a 5-pack of maps that were blown up, so I can play Cthulhu Wars Duel mechanics with the big miniatures. So since I own it, I always thought that'd be awesome, but I understand why that kind of got shot down.
Well, our maps have not always done super great for us, especially when you have maps that are just a map and nothing else. And the maps, frankly, are pretty derivative of the big Cthulhu Wars maps, but that's changing. We're going to be one of the things that we can do with Cthulhu Wars Duel is we can actually have create factions, and this is in the works, that wouldn't work in Cthulhu Wars. They can only work in a 2-player game, or maps that only work in a 2-player game. So that you can watch for that at some point, maybe near the end of 2023.
Like the Family Values expansion, or was it Family Values?
Yeah, or like Gotten Thoa might be one of the gods, one of the great old ones. But Gotten Thoa maybe doesn't have cultists, and he does something different. He's mummifying people as he goes around. He's trying to freeze the world, that kind of thing. So we're looking into that. We'll see where that goes. But we're very happy with the Cthulhu Wars duels because part of the greatness about them is that because they're popular and everyone gets them, then that money has gone into getting Cthulhu Wars out.
No, like I said, I think it's fantastic. One of my only criticisms about Cthulhu Wars itself is the fact that such a large product. It's hard to recommend it to everybody because it does have a price point. I mean, the price point isn't obscene price point isn't obscene for what you get, but it's just an obscene price point for some people. So Cthulhu Wars Duels is awesome for fixing that issue. So you mentioned the secret a little bit earlier ago. Do you want to talk or give any hints about the big secret that is coming for Cthulhu Wars that nobody knows about?
Well, we're going to announce it officially later on, only in a week or two, so I shouldn't give everything away, but I will say that we have when we did Cthulhu Wars the final onslaught with the cats and the demon sultan and all the other stuff, we also slipped into there another expansion for Cthulhu Wars. You may recall we did the final onslaught. We said we're not going to do any more Kickstarters for Cthulhu Wars, and we're not. So this is just straight to retail, but it's a pretty exciting thing based on the first story I ever read. Sorry, the third story I ever read of Lovecraft. And it's the whole Call of Cthulhu game is based on that story because it has investigators and a plot and everything, which like Call of Cthulhu doesn't have, actually, that story. But we have an awesome dire great old one who with an ability that's I told you about earlier that's pretty terrifying.
Right. Yes.
And then it introduces a new concept into Cthulhu Wars, a new type of grouping of units. So,
and for people who don't know, the groupings are the normal, the monsters, the terrors, the great old ones. So we're looking at a new one. Is that what we're talking about?
This is a different group.
Yes.
This is a grouping that goes across those, that puts the things that belong to this group. There's like a terror and there's a monster and there's a couple of cultists, and yet they're grouped together as this special thing. So it crosses the boundaries. I mean, the cultist ones you have to summon normally. The cultists you recruit, the monster you all that. But then there's this other relationship they have that makes them different. That is, I hope, fun and exciting. And the figures are really fabulous.
And
plus, after they were made, then I realized that one of the figures was again done to be me. So,
that's going to be like the long-standing Sandy Petersen Easter egg where they have that little secret figure that's stuck in there just of you.
Well, yes. And so when I do my review of it, which actually we're going to do with Richard Mathis of Grey Wizard, he's going to. I'm going to talk a lot about how handsome this one figure is and how he's a really good-looking guy, and maybe that doesn't fit Cthulhu Wars, but yeah. So we're excited to announce that soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And may I say,
Wizard, because he's easy to fly out here for it. So if you flew out here, you could do it instead.
I would love to, but you know what my career is, and me trying to leave this.
I know what your career is.
It makes me. There's times I actually try to get off for Gen Con, and I requested 2 weeks off to go to Gen Con. They said you can have 1 day off just due to our staffing issues, and that was all I was allowed. I said I can't fly to Gen Con with 1 day.
If you ever get a chance to visit Texas for something, then let us. Hopefully, it'll be near Dallas, and you can visit.
I would love to, if that's an open invitation.
Stay over at our house as long as you stay up all night playing Terrible Swiss Sword or something.
Hey, I would greatly, greatly appreciate that, and I thank you for the invitation. And I may take you up on that one, because I do plan on traveling. I have a dad who lives in Alabama, so I do get to Lower 48 quite a bit. And my wife has a father who lives in Las Vegas.
On the way. I'll bet if you fly there, if you take American Airlines, there'll be a connection to Dallas.
Oh, really?
Because that's a hub for American.
That may be the sneaky way for me to do it. That may be awesome.
Yeah, just make sure that your connecting flight is like 2 days later or something.
Yeah, I can do that. Just do the, fly. Well, I fly Alaska Airlines because, living in Alaska, we get wonderful flight benefits. So.
Yeah, no, I understand that would be a good thing. But Alaska Airlines, I think, sometimes partners with American.
They do. Which means I can use my mileage and my free flight because I get a free flight every year and stuff like that, a partner flight. So which is nice.
I had a friend from Seattle who always used Alaska Airlines because it was good for him.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Anyway, you can stop by and we can play games and you can see stuff. And
that'd be awesome. I appreciate that. That would be wonderful to do. So, Terror Pass. Something that I know a lot of people are excited about and some people are really looking forward to it. For those who don't know, what is the elevator pitch on Terror Pass?
The elevator pitch of Terror Pass is it is a cooperative board game which simulates the final episode in a Call of Cthulhu campaign where everything's come to a head and the whole world's falling apart and you must go in and save the world. It has there are each time you play, it's a scenario based on a map, and there's multiple scenarios on a given map. So, for example, one of the maps is the famous Silver Twilight Lodge, renowned in Call of Cthulhu things, which I made up back in 1982, I think. But it has the map of the lodge, and then there's adventures in it. So, like, the first adventure is It Basters. You have cultists that are worshiping Yogg-Sothoth that are turning into mutants, but that you have to stop. The second one is you're kidnapped by Fungi from Yoggoth and imprisoned in the basement and you got to escape. The third is there's ghouls and gugs fighting, but it forms a campaign. as you go through it. Your characters advance by use of insight. And two of the things that I think are especially exciting about the game, first, is you don't have to wait for your turn. There's not a turn order. Everyone moves at the same time. Now, you probably want to discuss it.
Oh, yes, I do. But you spoke about the camp play.
Sometimes you want to group up in one place. Sometimes you want to spread out. And the other thing that's really cool about it is that you literally don't know how to play when you start a scenario. You don't know how to win when you start a scenario. You know how to play. But you're like, how do we win? You don't know. There's a different menace for every scenario. So one of the scenarios, there's these cards with arcane glyphs on them that you flip over as you do things in the adventure. And as they flip, you start revealing a huge monster. When it's fully revealed, then at last you know where it is. You can go fight it. Other ones have a thing which is a menace, which is the ship is sinking. You're on a ship, and rat things are nibbling holes in it, so it sinks more and more, and you're trying to stop it from sinking. But you still don't know how to stop it from sinking, so you don't know how to win. So I think part of the fun is the mystery. You don't know how to win until you're well into the game. There's every game is radically different. Each game has every area, every location on the map has a card in it. And as you deal with the cards gradually go away, and you find out what's happening. Monsters appear. You get more insight, but it's different cards for every scenario. It's different monsters in the scenario. It's different everything. Every scenario has a bunch of unique things that are only in it, which is, I think, part of the fun. Now, one of the drawbacks of this is that when you're playing the game, unlike, say, Arkham Horror, you can play it a bunch of times basically without changing. But after you've played one of the games in Terror Pass, you've kind of used up, you could go back and play it again, obviously, but typically you've kind of used up that scenario because you know what's going on finally, and you don't want to go back to it for a while. So it's organized into a campaign, and it has an ending. In fact, the last adventure in the core game is you're trying to escape the Rock Canyon caverns while a atomic bomb built by the ancients is going off behind you. You have to get away in time. So there's, but as we're doing a lot of expansions to it, it probably take 2 or 3 months to finish the campaign in the core game, and then there's expansions which are like $10 or $12, each of which have a new map and a new campaign and new scenarios that you play. So we have one that's, like I said, is a ship. We have one that's a lighthouse, and those combine with a shipwreck on the lighthouse. There's a forest. And every map is just very unusual and different. The way that no turn structure, which is great, and this menace gradually accumulating over time, and the mystery of how you play it, how you solve it, are all things that are, I think, will be very attractive for people. It also, I've got a copy of it here, actually. I think it looks really good. I will show you.
Awesome. I get a little sneak peek then.
So, for example, this is a character. It's probably going to be flipped in your thing. There's a character.
Okay.
And he has stats that go up over time, and he has the slots at the bottom are for his items that he gets.
Very cool.
This is an example of a menace from one of the adventures. It's a time gate, and you're trying to turn the time gates off. And the time gates are on the map, not in this thing. This is marks that are on or off. And the problem is that Yithians are going around and turning the time gates back on, so you got to get them all off at once. And then this is a fourth of the map. It's actually, I can unfold it, but then you can't see it in the. But this is the Silver Twilight Lodge map part of it.
Oh, that's cool.
And one of the fun things about the Silver Twilight. Oh, let's see. That's not the one I want. Where is it? One of the fun facts about the Silver Twilight Lodge map is that if you look here in the Wizards category, right here, if you look at the cabinet, you can see that the Silver Twilight people play Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars.
That is an awesome touch. That is a very awesome touch.
And then I'm going to show you that in the other map, the caves looks really different from the building.
Oh wow, that looks really awesome. So this double-sided map, you're going to unfold it in various different ways to play out this specific scenario based on how you unfold the map. That is unique.
That's right. And like I kind of did with Cthulhu Wars, you know.
Right.
And then this character, one of the things, this is a pre-release version they did to see if we needed to make physical changes in it, not game changes because that was done. And we are making one of the physical changes in this map. Is going to be double. This character is going to be double thickness with slots in here to move your tokens on so they don't get bumped.
Thank you so much for that design decision. I cannot tell you how thankful I am for that design decision.
So anyway, that's the thing. It's got the tokens and cards you normally expect from Petersen Games. And it's not super giant. Oh, here's the box, and this box doesn't have the art on it because it's a pre-release thing. I mean, the whole thing fits in this box.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty wild for a Petersen
game. That is pretty darn amazing.
Product, right?
That is pretty darn amazing. Yeah. That is very, very cool.
Then the expansions are smaller. Well, the expansions might be just as wide, but they're narrower because they each have a map, and then they have a bunch of little cards and punch tokens.
That is awesome.
But the basic game has all the core stuff you're going to need. Actually, the expansions have characters too.
That is very, very cool. So one of the biggest things about campaign games and one of the struggles with campaign games, especially ones where you have characters who are going to evolve and go on through the entire campaign, how are you handling with player death and character death? Or is there character death?
There is character death. You can go insane or you can die. If you go insane, you are replaced by a rank 1 monster of the current campaign. So suddenly they find out that you were a cultist after you became a cultist, or you were a serpent man after all, or something, you know, whatever it is you turn into, right? Whatever the weakest monster is in that level.
Right.
And then if you die, then you just die. It's actually better to die than go insane, because when you go insane, there's a monster left behind, which is annoying. So the way that works is that if you are killed, then a new character appears in the start location for that map. Presumably he's someone else that was there that was, you know, not joining with you for some reason at first, and now he is. So he joins with you. And you don't want to, you can't use the character that died again during the rest of the campaign is the official rule. So if you run out of all the characters, then I guess you've lost the campaign. But yeah. And the other thing is that the way that it works, your characters have stats. You know, they have strength, intelligence, and power that go up. They start at 1 and they go up to a certain level. And the idea is not that you are building up your strength or your intelligence. The idea is that your strength is really 3 or whatever it is in the thing, but it starts at 1 because you don't know how to apply it in this situation yet. And as you gain insight, you realize, oh, to kill a Zoog, I have to shoot it in this spot. You know, these glyphs mean this, and your int goes up. And so it actually, every adventure, you have to learn anew what the secrets are, so you ramp up your character.
That is awesome. That is actually very cool.
One of the other cool things about it that I haven't seen in a lot of games is before you play the game, there's a preparation segment where everyone prepares for play. And the way you do that is you decide if you want to start with some insight or some extra luck. Luck is our shamrocks that re-roll a die for you. So, you know, luck. Or if you want some other perk, and you pay for these perks by shuffling disasters into the event deck. Cool.
Very, very cool.
So you can put more and more disasters in or not. And there's an event is played every turn. The team captain is no first player, because the team captain rotates and he's stuck with the event. So, and the other thing is the disasters have a red back. So you can tell one of the disasters the next thing on top, and you're like, oh crap, it's coming to me. You know, I'm going to get the disaster. And some of the events are bad and some are good, but the disasters are always like really bad. So
that's one of the things.
That's part of the fun.
That's one of the things I loved about Robinson Crusoe. I don't know if you played Robinson Crusoe, but the fact that your decisions may come back and bite you at a later round. So you need to make sure that you're picking decisions that you want to live with.
Yeah, and Anachrony does that too.
Yeah, that's another good example of a game that does that, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, so Now, one of the things is that there's a deck of 30 events, and usually you only go through about half of them or 2/3 of them in a game. So it's possible. So you're not going to have to go through all your disasters. But the main risk is if you get a bunch of disasters, you might get 3 or 4 disasters in a row, and that's really bad. So you have to have everyone talking about it, and everyone themselves, like, usually there's one guy who puts 3 disasters and like, oh, why did you do that, Mike? 3 disasters. Oh, now I can't afford to get one. And you're like, well, I'm going to be powerful. So that's part of the fun. So you can start with an item. One of the features of the items, there's items all over the map that you can search for, and then you cover them up with a token showing that you found it. But the items are one use.
Oh, really?
So if you got to find a pistol, and some are not one use, but it says on them how to do them. So you find a pistol, and the idea is not that you fire a shot and then it's used up. It's more that a monster comes, you're emptying the pistol at the monster, then throwing it at it, Or if you have a Kevlar vest, it's like now burned or partly dissolved with acid, and so almost everything's one use, except for some really weird things like the Yithian pill you get that you take it, you're possessed by a Yithian, and then your sanity goes to 0 and your stats all skyrocket, and you stay that way except you can't gain sanity until you decide to turn off the Yithian.
Oh, wow.
So like, well, sanity 0 is kind of risky, but I guess I'll try it. You don't die at sanity 0. You go insane when it goes below 0.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. So 0, you're probably actually technically insane, but other guys can sort of trick you into doing things. Oh, the sanity track. This is cool. So you have the sanity thing, okay? It starts out blue, then it goes down and it becomes black. Okay. Well, every character has a benefit, something good they can do, a special ability. Every game has that, right?
Oh, of course.
Or a lot of games.
Yes.
There's also a madness effect that kicks in when your sanity goes about halfway down into the black section, so that you don't have to suffer it until then. So when it's in the black, then you get the sanity effect. So you're like, and then when you finally get down, there's a yellow ball at the 1 level. That's your Desperation. If you spend that to power up, then you get extra dice. But then you
interesting.
So the
that's kind of like
changes as you go down, and you can decide, oh, I'm not insane yet. I can still use guns.
That's like the last ditch effort.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It makes the sanity track feel like it's not just a thing going down. It's like you're changing as it happens, and you're just having your sanity kick in. And the sanity feels different for everyone, because some people, one person is, I can't use guns. Another person is, I can't recover properly. Other people do different things, like they lose extra. It just depends on who the player is. But that's part of the fun, if you feel unique with that. Just like in Planet Apocalypse, I was amazed when I found out that people actually kind of hung their hats on having flaws. And they love their little flaws. So I've been using that ever since. But these flaws are, I think, more interesting in a way, because you can sort of control if they're active or not by having your sanity be high enough. And of course, there's other feature. As you move around on the map, then the threat grows because you're taking longer. And if you rest to recover, you can get your stats back, but the threat grows even more. So you have to balance like staying in play with seeing that threat track go around and build up. And as it goes up, the doom increases, and all the monsters have a stat based on doom.
Interesting.
So at the start of the game, the cultists haven't the troglodyte monsters have a horrify check, kind of like sanity of 0, because doom is 0. But later on, it's like 5, and then that's a really scary horrify check. So the monsters get worse and worse as the game goes on. So it's not just you're getting closer to the magic number that ends the game. It's that the monsters are actually getting tougher to kill. They have more hit points. They have a more terrifying attack. They have something going about them that makes them more lethal because doom has gone up. So I think that's a fun thing. So the whole game kind of is organically moved together, which is probably why it is the longest game design I've ever done.
So a question for you. One of the biggest, hardest things with story and campaign style games is when you fail, you have to replay each individual adventure. Take a game such as Time Stories. Have you played Time Stories before?
Not yet.
Okay. So basic idea of Time Stories, it's mostly kind of like you get like this layout of all your cards, and your cards are going to be different locations you can go to. If you go to a location, you're going to waste your valuable resource, which is time, but it may give you clues. But some of these cards may waste your time and not give you a worthwhile clue, and you can move around, go to different locations, and you need to solve the mystery before you run out of time. The negative about a style game like that, though, is since it's a campaign style game, once you run out of time, you got to start all over at ground zero and start the adventure all over again. So you're basically redoing what you've already done, which it kind of makes it kind of boring to replay it. Whereas you take a game such as Machina Arcana, which is also a story game, but the way it adds it more fun to replay the stories is when you fail, you can pick different heroes, you may run into different bad guys, different events may come out, and different gear and equipment may come out. So how are you handling the replaying when you fail of various different campaigns, quests, adventures, whatever you're calling them?
Well, I mean, one obvious thing is that if you gone to the next scenario in the campaign, then like everything is different. There's new bad guys. You don't know how to. Now you still don't know how to win because you know how to win the last one, but now you don't know how to win this one. So basically, the way it works in Terrapaths is if you've almost got to the end of your adventure and you lost, which because they're one shots, you kind of play it once. The game is weighted more towards players winning than Planet Apocalypse, which is, as you know, weighted really heavily towards players winning, right? But this one, I figured they're going to play it once. They want to see all the stuff, and then they can go on to the next adventure. So it's, I mean, you can lose, and we've lost plenty of times, but winning is like 50%, 2/3 of the time. As you get better, it gets more common. So when you win, or you get close to winning, then you kind of know everything in the game. You now know how to win. You know what the final monster is. You figured it out. And then if you lost, you can either decide, well, we'll go back and play that again, because now we know how to win, or you can say, you know what, those guys were all dead that played that game. They were eaten by the Hound of Tindalos or whatever. Now we're going to go to the next game because we saw enough of it. Or sometimes I've had players that went through it and they lost too early to really know the magnitude of the game. And so they can go back and play that again if they want to move on. So it's really up to your team. You could just move. You could just say, those 4 guys, they're dead. Okay, next game in the series. The campaign continues. What happened to Uncle Ed? Well, I guess he was eaten by the Hound of Tindalos in the caverns, but we can keep playing. So you can sort of do it as you please in it.
So it has a nice bonus so that every individual campaign story, is success or failure is still going on to the next story, basically, is what you're saying then?
You can still go on to the next story. Not every Lovecraft story has a happy ending.
No, definitely not.
but if you didn't get to the ending, you could try it. You could read it again, and at least the first part you might be better off with. So, for example, one of the reasons that they lost recently in the Hound Dog scenario, which takes place in the caves, is the caves basically have 2 branches. You go down through the caverns, and the characters started out going down one branch, then they went to the other branch, then they started going back and forth like this a lot. And when you move a long ways, then the threat goes up. So they were pumping up that threat like crazy until finally, like when the big bad monster appeared, their threat was so high that it went past 7 and they lost.
Right.
But even there, it was getting tougher because when the Doom was at 7, then they didn't want to meet any of the monsters because they all had, these huge attacks, and the monsters were just unthinkably horrible. And these are monsters they'd scorned in the early game because Doom's 0. He has an attack of 0. Let's go kill him. Because the monsters were cowering in the light, and they were cautious of trying to conceal the early monsters. But then later on, they come out in their power, and it was very exciting for the players.
That sounds really awesome.
Of course, they were tougher too.
Right.
Because they built up their guys. They had better weapons. And
that sounds awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm also looking forward to the fact that you're going to be having extra campaigns or, adventure packs. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Adventure packs that add to the replay.
Because they're just cards. Just cards and cardboard.
And that's awesome because that's, in my opinion, if I may say, and I'm just going to be blunt because that's how I am, one of your guys' struggles has always been that you guys like to produce these large, big, overproduced products. And that's kind of been a struggle for you guys getting on the presence on the retailer shelves, getting the presence in, the average consumer because your games are, they're higher priced. So games like Cthulhu Wars Duel is fantastic because it's $30. Sounds like Terrapaths has also got a really reasonable price point that will be exciting for everybody to get into the game.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a retailer tell me that she told me that when I sell a Cthulhu Wars, it's like selling 4 other games, which is kind of nice, which I guess is true. But I see the point. We're probably never going to stop doing the giant sprawling games because we love them, but we are mitigating it with games that are not giant and sprawling, and Terrapaths is one of those. You can afford to buy it. You can carry it somewhere to play it. In fact, I have it on Tabletop Simulator. That's how I've been testing it. So you could actually play it, but it won't have all the cool art.
Awesome.
If you want to do that, so at some point we can talk about that after the call if you want.
That'd be appreciated. No, I really do appreciate that quite a bit.
Also, Hyperspace is fully there with all the art.
So
and all the.
I'm actually fortunate enough that I actually got a copy of Hyperspace, and I've actually played one of the very lucky people in the beginning.
The Starship.
Yep.
The Star Cadets.
Yep. I actually did a full video series on it, and I enjoyed the game immensely. And everybody in my play group immediately after we got done playing went back to Kickstarter, which was funny because I'm like, I'm doing the same. They're like going, yeah, we want copies of this game too because we had so much fun with it. So they enjoyed it that darn much. So, and
did you have a favorite alien?
I like to play the more twisty kind of braces when I play games. So like when I play Cthulhu Wars, I love Yellow Sign, and I also love Black Goat because I love how they play. They're not direct, they're subtle.
A lot of people don't get Black Goat, and so they think it's weaker. But
No, it's not. It's such a devious faction. If you know how to play, you kind of sit back and go, a lot of that kind of stuff.
You're like a fungus infection that they can't extirpate, you know?
Exactly.
They try to attack you, and then like your stupid ghouls come in and scare them all away, and then you're spreading over here, and then like you go after Jeb Niggurath, and she's like, I need to go over here in this place where you only had one cultist and a gate, and now I'm there.
Yep.
Yeah, and your cultist is here. Yep. He can take the hit.
Yep. I'm the same way when I play the Gods War. I like the more subtle factions, the factions where it's like, no, I'm not going to constantly attack you. I'm going to win, but I'm not going to win by constantly attacking you. I love the subtlety.
Right.
That's just my gameplay style. So
like Darkness, you know, and is one of those factions, I would say, and Sky.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, I don't want a game where there's a faction that turtles.
No.
But
so boring.
But they don't have to all be combat.
Right.
It's as long as you like Yellow Sign is emphatically not a combat faction, but they still mess with you.
They do.
Which is the fun part.
Yeah, I'd say except for the original version of the Chocho, Cthulhu Wars did a great job of keeping.
Yes, that was the one turtle one. I actually made them consciously knowing they would turtle. Saying,
right.
Well, some people like turtling, so I'm going to put this in for them.
And I'm kind of glad that you got the new versions of the Chocho that should be, well, they'll be coming out soon, hopefully for everybody. And I'm actually looking forward to that myself.
They're printed. Yeah, they're coming. Yeah, but I got a lot of flack on the Chochos, and it wasn't. I didn't change it because I didn't like having them turtle, but a lot of people pointed out that it's not as fun to win with the Chochos even, and I took that to heart. And I said, okay, we're gonna do this, and that should make it more interesting, especially since one of the three Chocho tribes is the one that gets cheaper independence.
Oh, really? So that'll be nice.
So you use that in conjunction with allied monsters and independent great old ones, and it's good for that.
Awesome. That's pretty exciting. That'll be really exciting for a lot of people who enjoy Cthulhu Wars but want to enjoy the Chocho. Because I know the original Chocho, they don't come out on the table in my gaming group at all anymore. I have one guy we play with who loves the turtle, and we're like, no, you're not allowed anymore.
We did improve them a little bit by saying that when you get your priest, everyone else gets a high priest and things like that, but it was a stopgap. I mean, what can I say? Well, when I did Hyperspace, one thing I'm sure you notice is that and even Gods War, that Cthulhu Wars, almost all your interactions are hostile. And in Gods War and even more in Hyperspace, you have a lot of interactions that are not hostile. You still only one person wins, so you're not their friend, but you're forced to do things with them. Like every time you research in Hyperspace, someone else gets an organic.
Right.
And then almost every faction in Hyperspace has some ability that messes with that. Like the Venge when they get all grumpy because you didn't give them the organic.
Exactly. Which I thought was a really fun mechanic too. I liked how that was. That was one of the more creative things with the Venge. Is like going, so you're going to be kind of like the jealous ex just for a second here.
Yeah.
So
it's like exactly. And then you kind of like it when they don't give it to you because then you get to advance your grudge track.
Right. Yep.
That's always fun.
That's a lot of fun. So have you guys thought about anything new or for RPG stuff? I mean, I know you guys have been supporting 5th edition for a lot,
are we ever?
But 5th edition is moving on, and
I'm not sure how officially this has been announced, but I've talked to other people about it, so I'm willing to tell it to you. If it hasn't, so we are coming back to Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, exciting!
We have the license. We have the agreement with Chaos Team, who will of course love me, right? And we are absolutely and we have the first campaign is called Big C, which is spelled big and then SEE, and it's a hardback book like our D&D stuff, and it's like 200 pages. It's a full campaign set actually in the Seattle area.
Interesting.
And
so
they're in modern times because I think that's scarier than the 20s, and also because Cassian wants us to do modern times. I think to differentiate them from us from their products, and I think modern times is just arguably scarier because you don't have to. You can put yourself in a modern situation more easily,
and you can kind of imagine it as a player too. Like it's harder for people to play like a 1920s if they're not familiar with the genre, the time, the period. Right. So that's a lot better.
In the 1920s, you have to say, "Can I buy a submachine gun?" And you have to look it up, or like, "Is there a train that goes here?" But in modern times, you just know what you can do.
Exactly. Which is a wonderful bonus.
There's like an Indian takeout place down the street. Everything's clear, and so that's what's going on. But we do have a section in it that says how to modify it for the 1920s. So, for example, the current version, there's a super collider built underground that the cultists have that never got completed because they ran out of money. So the cultists are like using that for something. But if you play in the 20s, then it's a subway track.
What rule system? I'm assuming it's using Call of Cthulhu rule system, right?
It's totally, you need Call of Cthulhu to play it.
Awesome. That's exciting.
It is a Call of Cthulhu campaign.
That is absolutely fantastic.
And one of the really unique features in it, if I might say, which is, are you the game master?
Yes, I am the horrible evil.
Okay, don't tell you, then it is, as far as I can tell, the first full campaign since Shadows of the Yogg-Sothoth to have the Cthulhu cult be the bad guys. You think in a game called Call of Cthulhu,
right,
he'd be everywhere, and he's just not. But this is a campaign, and it's Cthulhu's guys.
Interesting. That should be really, really awesome. I'm actually looking forward to that now.
There's a repeating villain who is actually a star spawn that shows up.
Oh, nice. That should be exciting.
And whenever he shows up, there's like a huge lightning storm, which makes deniability if like no one else noticed him because they change natural laws. So there's always this stuff.
Right.
And you can tell it's him because he has a glowing orange interior.
So have you ever thought about doing your own design for your own RPG system, or are you happy using the other RPGs?
I'm doing it right now.
Oh, really?
I'm doing one right now. Yes. I'm not doing a horror one because I'm very happy with my horror RPG that I did.
Right.
But I'm doing a science fiction one.
Nice. Do you care to give a little details?
It's sure. It's set in the hyperspace universe, so it won't come out until after hyperspace.
Mm-hmm.
It uses my tabletop game that I've already designed called Starship Captain, which is a ship-to-ship combat game, like Starfleet Battles kind of, except in the hyperspace universe.
Right.
And which also we play all the time on tabletop simulator, so I want to try that. It's pretty quick. It's like you get you two cruisers go out there and battle each other and all the other ships, and then so that we can the hyperspace role playing game. Here's a feature, buddy, you'll like the character advancement. It's based on Planet Apocalypse advancement. Oh,
really?
Yes.
That is kind of an interesting idea. That would be a lot of fun. That would.
You pick a bonus and you combine it with one of the cards on your thing, and you get the power. You rank up. So interesting. Another feature of it is that there are some aliens that are friendly enough to hang around with humans. There's some you can't. You're not going to be a star spawn or a skith or something like that. But the Venge can actually deal with humans. They're horrible and nasty because they're the Venge, but they have comprehensible motives, even if sort of exaggerated. Mm-hmm. So when you're playing one of these aliens, they don't have. When I say they don't have the same stats as humans, and I don't mean they roll different numbers of dice. I mean they don't have the same stats. Like they might not have strength, and they might not have willpower, and they might not have constitution because they are alien. They might have a panoply, or obsession as a stat, and they are very alien, different skills. So one of the things that's a little challenge is it takes a long time to design the aliens, but that's kind of cool because then you have these really alien aliens that are not just a pile of stats. They're like, I'm going to be a Venge, and my weapons are nothing like human weapons because they're these goofy, they're Venge stuff. And then if you're killed as a Venge, you kind of fall apart in your component parts, and the component parts are still alive, and they can crawl around. You can try to attach them to someone else. So you have ways of getting other people's knowledge on you by grafting things because you're, the Venge. And then, of course, the Skith are just enemies, right?
So you have my interest. I would love to sit here and talk to you for a couple hours about this because like I said, RPGs were the first thing I grew up with. When I was 12, I think I played my first RPG, and I've just never looked back. So it
took a while for my team to talk me into doing another RPG, but I said, you know what, I'll do it. So when I get a little more formalized, I can do a Zoom or a Skype game with you.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. That would be awesome.
Do you have a campaign set up? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying I would love to do that. I would look forward to that. That would be awesome.
So the basic idea behind hyperspace in the campaign is that it's the hyperspace game board game world where Cthulhu took over Earth. So humans are rare. They don't have a home world. They kind of stick together. They aren't hostile to each other. So it's not like Traveler at all, where there's lots of humans. There's very few humans. And the typical idea is that you and the other players in your group have their own spaceship that you're trying to improve over time. And you're out, and basically your overarching goal is eventually to help humanity reestablish a place in the universe. but you're going out and meeting with aliens, fighting them, doing diplomacy, exploring, you're going from planet to planet. So it's all, and then you're in your spaceship. So everyone has a job on the spaceship. Someone is on comms, someone's navigation, someone is the gunner. So that's also gives you something to do when there's space combat. And there's space combats where the ship is fighting, and there's also, combat on the ground where you like pull out your blaster or your blades or something and fight the bad guys.
That sounds super exciting. I'm actually really, really looking forward to what comes out for that. That sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. So that looks like it's going to be super enjoyable.
Well, I mean, you asked if I was doing a role-playing game, so now you know.
Yeah, and now this is me grinning from ear to ear because I'm like going, ooh, that sounds like it's going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm glad you're doing it because I think we get stuck with the same old things. It's always 5th edition, well, whatever, 1D&D is like they just announced it's now going to be 1D&D. It's basically that or Pathfinder or Starfinder, and a lot of the lesser-known ones kind of fall by the wayside, and they have some wonderful bonuses they bring to the table.
I mean, I'm a little scared because science fiction games have not always done really well, but on the other hand, if hyperspace does as well as I think it will, because I think it'll be a real hit among the board game community, and if Starship Captain does as well as I think it will, because it's quite the game, definitely want to play that with you. But then I think hyperspace, the role-playing game, should have some traction. It may not be as big. It's never going to be as big as D&D or even Cthulhu or Call of Cthulhu, but it might be big enough to have its own fan base, have people playing it and enjoying the action.
That is awesome. That is very, very cool. So you've talked about a lot of cool surprises coming in the future for Petersen Games, which I think is awesome. Before we talk about current projects, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Any spoilers? Any things to make everybody get super excited about besides the stuff we've already talked about?
I think I've made enough spoilers for now. I will say that we have 17 games that are ready to go as soon as we get the scratch to do them, and we have 11 more games that are designed but not laid out that are almost ready to go. Okay, they're not all games. Some are like expansion packs and stuff.
Right.
But in general, there's a lot of them. So we are able to do things for quite a while with our stuff, and I'm excited for that.
That is super awesome. So have you guys managed to decide when we talk about hyperspace or Planet Apocalypse, do you guys have a strong inkling of what's going to be next to come out next? What is going to hit production next? So what we're going to do, the next game we're going to do after
Cthulhu Warships is probably going to be, and when I say probably being 99%, either Planet Apocalypse or Hyperspace. And I am personally rooting for Hyperspace, but we're going to have to do an analysis over the course of a week or so to make sure that it's the one that, whichever one, like if it turns out that if we do Planet Apocalypse first, it'll mean we can do Hyperspace quicker in terms of months, or vice versa, then that will also affect us. But I really want to see Hyperspace. So if it's all things being equal, that's what it's going to be. And then the next one is going to be probably whichever one we didn't do second. Then after that, we're going to move on to Eternal Adversary, Dinosaur 1944. I kind of rooting for Dinosaur 1944 because I think it's a really fun, rollicking game, as befits its name, So it's got a lot of...
just for me, when it talks about Petersen Games things, I've backed everything you guys have designed except for Eternal Adversary. So I am actually looking for Dinosaur 1944. I'm looking for the God's War expansion with the extra gods and everything like that.
Yes, you have to do that one too. That's in there.
One I'm really looking forward to. So I actually backed Dinosaur 1944 for the simple fact that it looked like... So, little segue. Planet Apocalypse, while I enjoy it greatly, the theme is a little bit darker. So Dinosaur 1944 it got my attention because it's kind of like a game that plays a lot of players. If you do the teams, plays a higher player count, but it has a friendlier theme, which is what really sucked me in and made me really interested in that one. So
yes, you kind of want to keep Planet Apocalypse away from the little kids because the monsters are just terrifying. But Dinosaur 44 is all friendly. Dinosaur 44. Here's a fun fact about it. So when we were doing it, I had some of the dinosaurs figured out and some of the stats, and I said to my team, I said everyone gets to pick a prehistoric animal, and I'll put it in the game. So everyone. So that's why it has weird things like Tyrannus and stuff, because someone like that.
Oh, that's funny.
That's where the monsters came from. So that was kind of fun.
That's an awesome little Easter egg. That is actually very, very cool.
And I thought it would be cool because that way I'd have some weird dinosaurs. It wouldn't just be like stegosauruses and brontosauruses, and it would be these oddball things. So that was a trick. Anyway, we're also going to periodically as we're doing these, be releasing other games without figures, basically, that are cheaper to produce to keep both to speed up the production of other games. So, for example, originally we have the capability right now to publish TerraPaths in October.
Oh wow!
But we're not going to because Cthulhu Wars is going to hit the shelves around October, middle October, early October, because it's going to be shipped. I mean, it's being shipped now, but it's being shipped from China. So right. And of course we can't ship it to California because like all the truckers just like are on strike.
Right. That's disappointing because TerraPaths plays up to 6 players, and again, my gaming group.
Well, what we decided we want to get. Oh yeah, well it does. Well, actually, TerraPaths in theory has no limit to the number of players you can have on it.
Really?
There's nothing that limits it because you don't have to wait for your turn.
Right.
You all move at the same time. It's just that during the menace phase, the track moves up a number of points equal to the number of players, and then some of the menaces are affected by the number of players, and they get so if you have 12 players, there's like everyone better carry their weight,
Right.
But we only put enough tokens in for 5 players or 6 players, but you can make your own tokens and then you're good.
Well, that's awesome
because the tokens is not right. So we decided to give people a break, not to release TerraPaths at the same time as Cthulhu Wars was coming out, because that
the secret kind
one
of
thing the conspiracy theorists will come up with some theory. I don't even know what it'll be about why we did that. And the other thing is people's wallets just took a hit from Cthulhu Wars, so let's give them a break. We can release it anytime you have it. So our plan is to release it very, very early next year.
Okay. Well, if you happen to get any copies in early, I'll give you my credit card number.
I got this copy here in early. I can send it to you if you want. It's not perfect because it's got the changes he made, but
oh man.
Or we can play it online. I got a playtest team that I play with a South African, a Finn, and a Canadian.
Oh wow.
That's the glory of Tabletop Simulator.
That is very nice about Tabletop Simulator. It's
we played a Star based on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which none of them had seen, so they didn't know who these guys were.
Oh really?
So it was fun.
The classic original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I haven't told you this, but I know I told Arthur about this. I grew up on horror films. I watched tons and tons of horror films. I grew up on classic The Thing from 1982, horror films older than that. My brother took me to every single horror film you could ever think of because he was older than me. So.
Well, I mean, those aren't all horror films, but a lot of them.
Oh man, that is.
And no, I'm a huge horror buff, as you know. And I was in my 20s before I realized that not everyone liked horror films. I had no idea because I liked them so much. I just assumed everyone else must too. But,
yeah,
they don't.
Love classic horror films. I don't think there's.
Have you seen? Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Have you seen The Ritual?
Yes.
The artist that made the monster in that is the same guy that did the Planet Apocalypse monsters.
Oh, really? That is really awesome.
So if you notice a resemblance, it's not coincidence.
That is really, really cool. That is actually a nice touch. That is really awesome.
So like that monster in The Ritual makes no sense when you look at how it's doing things, just like Planet Apocalypse. So that's that.
Oh, that is really very cool. Well, speaking of Planet Apocalypse, can you give us any hints about the expansion that is coming up? What are we going to see with the maps? Any heroes, any monsters you can talk about? Any little hints?
There's heroes, there's monsters. I kind of went, let's see here. I'm opening up my file on it right now so I can give you the stuff straight, because why not, right? So there's new Force Circle demons, there's new maps, there's new lords, one of which is another 4-crown lord, so that's dire, but that's what you got to expect, right?
Well, that's why I like the game, because it's not a game that you're going to be able to beat every time you play it. Right.
Now, I will say that in theory, it is possible to beat a 4-crown lord on the highest maps. It's mathematically possible. I have not done it. I've beaten the highest lords on lower maps, but the game just scales up, so you're never done, right?
Yeah.
So let's see what we got here. Okay, so here are What do you want to hear first? Characters, demons, what?
Heroes
Troopers.
first.
Troopers even. I have Swiss.
Oh, the Swiss. You know, let's go with the troopers then.
Swiss. I have Italians. You know, I've got. I have. Who does the air? Oh, China. I have Chinese, and they have an airstrike. They can send a bomber, and that's their ambush is an airstrike.
Very nice.
But it goes away after it fires. But it's this huge thing. Like if you have 4 of them, it's 4d12 damage.
Oh wow!
And then the airstrike, and it costs a fortune because you'd expect.
Right.
And it can't absorb damage.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. So it's a good thing to throw out there when the big guys are marching on the track, but then it's not going to be anything that's going to be able to stop and stay around. So that's very, very cool.
But another cool thing about that is if the Lord is getting close, you may not want to put a big thing. They go away, so it means they won't be killed when the Lord walks over them.
Very cool. So I see some maps that would be better than others to actually have them in, because they're going to have some maps where they're going to be really fantastic in.
And some maps are not going to be good, and you won't be able to afford them. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so here's the characters. I have a character called Scott Delrich, who is basically Ash from Evil Dead.
Perfect. Very perfect.
And one of his abilities is Trouble Magnet. If you have any pestilence, fire, or stun tokens, add a d8 to your attack. Because,
Very nice.
So then I have a character based on my granddaughter, Eva Noel, who starts out with extra 4 courage in the pool, and she has the flaw self-pity. You can't buy a gift in the team phase unless someone else buys one too.
Wow, that's kind of a nice little touch, or a nice little disadvantage to make it a little challenging.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, There's a character called Bruno Don who is based on the movies of an Italian director who is absolutely terrible and super entertaining called Bruno Mattei. And so this guy is literally delusional. Like for example, he has an imaginary friend. So at the start of the game, he picks a trooper type that no one's using and puts it by the others, and then only he can recruit those.
Oh, cool. That's kind of interesting. That would be that would be brutal on some maps. I can think of how brutal that's going to be on some maps.
Astronauts, That's what the guy picked when he was in the last game I played. He picked astronauts. Sure, why not? No one else can see him or use him, but he did that.
Yeah, that's a little bit brutal.
He also has megalomania. If he ends his turn in a 4-circle demons area, he gains 3 courage.
Ooh. So
I have
that could create some interesting gameplay mechanics, because you're like going, okay, we really need courage because we're not doing so great, and we have this wonderful ability here that we really need somebody to have. Because maybe we have like something that's coming down the track that requires double dice or something like that. So that could be interesting.
Okay, I have a character called Carolyn Totekoff, and she is based on, you've seen Road Warrior, obviously, the original one.
The original
I mean, the new one, the original one. Do you remember the gal with the bow and the white football gear?
Yes.
That was cool. Her.
Cool. Awesome.
So she has things like charismatic flaw. When you're killed, the team loses 4 doom instead of 2. There's her booby trap ability, which is, as an action, she can take one of her attack tokens off her attack box and put it in the area, and then it fires at enemies like an ambush. Add into an ambush, then you get it back.
Oh, that is very, very cool. That is nice.
Before you go back to recruit, you leave behind your D10 or whatever, and it's
that might
so
be
cool.
My new favorite hero, because my current favorite hero one is a sniper from the original base box.
Oh, Hannah Hazard?
Hannah Hazard. She's one of my favorite heroes to use because of her abilities and how she can, like I've told you earlier, I love to control the flow whenever I play a game. It's kind of like my thing. So that's kind of why I like her a lot. So she's fun for that.
Carolyn also has the start ability of a lost everything, which means she doesn't have a start ability. But she has increased stats to make up for it.
Oh, that's very cool.
So, toughness 3, so it's kind of makes up for it. Let's see, I got, of course, I have like Commander Black, the Doom guy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He has the Big Fun Gun, which is the official name for the BFG, by the way.
Really?
Which I invented.
I did not know what the BFG stands for. We always assumed it stood for something that I will not say because I keep my channel very family friendly.
Big Fun Gun.
We're
sticking with
that. Is awesome.
But so when you get the Big Fun Gun gift, you then pick up the gift deck, search through it, pick a gift and set it aside, and the next gift you get is that one.
Oh, that's cool. That is awesome.
The other thing he doesn't have a starting card. He can pick any of the cards. They all cost 7, he can pick any of those for a starting, and they start from there.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. So any lords you want to talk about?
So the maps.
Or the maps. Yeah, maps.
There's a Pacific island in which you are in the middle of the island, and there's 4 beaches, and there's monsters out in the reefs, and they're coming in from 4 directions.
Ooh, that sounds like an upgrade version of the one where they're coming from the 3 sides. What's the map where it looks like?
It does, but in this one, the Lord, there's only one Lord, and he moves around. Basically, when a hero goes into a reef area, you roll a d4, and if you get a 4, he's there.
Oh, that sounds brutal.
So you're trying to find him.
That is
okay. There is the wave, which is they build up a bigger assault, and then you have a start area, and the Lord starts in the back, and then there's things coming up through the beaches. But what they do is they come in, they move to a central place, then they spread out, and then they come in from multiple directions.
Very cool.
So you're trying to get that. There's the Rome catacombs, which have 3 start areas and 3 paths to the Lord, but the paths are not connected. The only way you can move to a new path from the one you're on is when you retreat from Helltime.
Oh,
when you can go any area.
So
you kind of have to pick which area you want to be in.
That can be very devious when you're trying to play through that one, because you may end up on the wrong path, which means you're forced to go attack the Lord again if you have to move, which could be one heck of a Hail Mary play if you need to do it just right.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you could go in there and just take the menace, and then at your first attack say, I'm fleeing, but you still had to get the menace.
Right. So
there's the Catacombs of Paris, which are like the reverse, where there's 3 lesser lords, and as the lords move in, as you kill them, when you kill a lesser lord, the other lords advance. When you kill the second lesser lord, the last lesser lord becomes a full lord and heals all its damage.
Huh. Interesting.
And so they only advance periodically, so they basically they only move when a lord is killed. Which means that there's only 3 spaces before they hit the start. So when one lord's killed, the other 2 move 1 space. Then when that one's killed, the greater lord moves and he's in 1 space, and now he's right adjacent to the start.
Oh, see, that's awesome. See, one thing I love is that actually reminds me a lot of. Did you ever play Defenders of the Realm? That's what I'm looking for. Defenders of the Realm from Richard Lyons.
Oh yeah, I love Defenders of the Realm. It's like a Pandemic, but more fun.
Those are my exact words every time I describe it. It's basically Pandemic, but fun. So it's an awesome game. Yes. But as you defeat one of the lords who are attacking, every time one gets defeated, the other ones get tougher to defeat, which makes it more challenging, which is such a cool aspect of the game. So you have to decide which bad guy you're taking out, because that's influencing the rest of your gameplay.
Yeah. So the 4th circles, we have the Fachan, because the Fachan has 1 arm, 1 eye, 1 leg. There can be only 1. So his ability is that when you are playing against the Fachan, you only get to roll 1 of the tokens in your attack box.
Ooh, that could be brutal.
Yes.
That'd be interesting. So does he come? He comes with a miniature then?
What?
That's going to be a miniature then?
Yeah, we have a miniature for him. He's like what you expect from Planet Apocalypse. We have the Scarlet, who basically after the enemies move, all minions in an area that doesn't have heroes or troopers except for circles are removed and replaced with an invasion token.
Interesting.
Which can be good if there's a whole ton of guys and become a token, but if the area has 1 larva and becomes an invasion token, that kind of sucks.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh yeah, there's the Imp Swarm that when you defeat it, you roll to spare dice and spawn new demons in its area.
Awesome. So now you got me wanting to pull out Planet Apocalypse right now after we get done with this and play Planet Apocalypse.
So there's Belphegor, the demon of sloth. He's a lord. And Belphegor starts with sloth tokens. And when he targets you, you get a sloth token. And the thing is, if you want to retreat, then you have to roll a d4. And if the roll is equal to or less than your sloth, you don't get to retreat.
Interesting. So that whole pressure luck mechanic could go there and just completely do you in, because you're like going to do one more round. I did the math. Statistically, I'm going to survive. Then you're like going, oh, I can't retreat? Oh, no. You can't retreat. That's just got interesting.
And if you have 4 more sloth tokens, you cannot retreat.
Period.
So Yeah, because you always roll. There's Lord Coronzon, who's so the way it works is when Coronzon attacks, okay, so each hero rolls a d10 when you go into him, and you keep that by your sheet. That's your number.
Right.
Then when Coronzon attacks, he rolls a 6d10, but he doesn't choose a target. Instead, if any of the dice show a hero's number, like if you have a 9 and one of the 6 dice shows a 9, then you take full damage from the attack.
Ooh, wow. That's brutal.
He's pretty terrifying. And of course, if 2 of you have the same number, then you both get it.
Ouch.
There is Lord Hearn, who has starts with a Hellhound, and he has packs, and you have to. The packs do damage. Basically, the attacks is kind of like the wall of Baphomet, but instead of making him weaker, they make him stronger.
Interesting.
So you want to get rid of the packs. There is the Hydra, which has heads with different healths that are targeted separately, and each head can attack individually or they can group together, whatever the captain wants, and they tend to poison you. And if you have more Lord Shadow tokens, then you have if you have more venom tokens than your health, you instantly die.
Oh.
They don't damage you except for head and venom tokens, which can't go away, of course.
Oh, wow. That sounds a little devious.
See, there is a Japanese one who, the captain picks a hero who is shackled, okay? And it's meant to be a new one every time. Only shackled heroes can target Lord Meizu. Unshackled heroes can still be hit by him, fight minions, help, and others help, but they can't attack the Lord. If all the heroes are shackled, you lose.
Oh, wow. So you
retreat.
Can only go into the attack on the Lord a couple times based on the player count. And if you don't plan it right, so that's going to create an interesting mechanic, because what's going to happen is you're going to have the people who are going to hesitate too long, or they're going to get antsy and go too early, and they're going to get defeated.
I mean, yes. And hesitating too long is a common way to lose Planet of Apocalypse.
Right. Because the game has that constant pressure on you to get in there and get it done quickly before it tears you down.
Yep. Okay, so Tucholcha, who is Aztec, or actually Sumerian, when you attack in her area, for each die you roll that doesn't hit any enemy, you must place a demon of your choice in Tucholcha's area.
Oh, wow.
So it starts out being like, larvae, but then when you run out of larvae, it's got to go up
to the next one. And when you run out of those, you're going to run out of those, and you're going to have to move in. Oh, that's brutal.
We, of course, because it's like the whole game is kind of based on Doom, we have the Cyber Demon.
Right.
And the Cyber Demon's thing is very simple. He attacks 3 times in a row, just like the Cyber Demon.
Well, that's cool. That is a nice
homage. Yeah, well, it's a 60-12 attack, so 3 times in a row is kind of sucky.
Yeah, it is. But he's a 4-crown, though, too, so it kind of makes sense.
He has 4 crowns. Yeah. Then there's Feludo, who is based on the Petersen Games logo.
The Mantis.
We're going to have a big figure of Petersen Games, the Mantis. Yep. And what he does, he gives you parasite tokens. And if you, if the pool, the total... Basically, what you do is the parasite tokens are on her, Feludo, and you add a parasite token to her, then add minions. And the minions circles added up must equal Feludo's total parasite tokens.
Oh, wow. That's...
So if you have, if the pool runs short, then you gain Doom. So the thing is, larvae are 0, so you can't add those. So if you have 4 parasite tokens, do we want a 4 circle or 4 first circle? You got to pick something.
Right.
And, and Feludo... The first person he attacks, then from then on, he only attacks that person until that person retreats or is dead.
Ooh, that could be a little brutal. That can be very brutal.
So you kind of want to retreat then. Yeah. Let's see. And that's it. And the last hero to retreat gains 1 luck per parasite token. Okay,
so you want to change up who's retreating based on who can get the best abilities from the luck tokens. So that's kind of a cool add-on. That's very nice.
So those are the lords. That's I didn't tell you all the 4 circles or all the troopers, but I told you about the airstrike.
Right. Well,
that's a lot of detail there.
You got to leave a little surprises for people too. So Hyperspace. Hyperspace is a game that I am super excited about, and I know a lot of people are excited about, because you managed to take a 4X game and make it play faster, which is something that we've all wanted for our 4Xs, from Twilight Imperium to Exodus Proxima Centauri, Eclipse. All these 4X games either drop one of the 4Xs out and become a 3X, or they're games that just take a long, long time to play. So that's one thing that we do appreciate from the design. The thing that
Well, you've played Hyperspace, so you know that it's quick, and you know that it has all 4Xs.
Right. But one of the biggest challenges for Hyperspace is, even once it goes out there, it's such a large project or a large product that it's kind of like Cthulhu Wars, where everybody's going to feel like the pressure to get in on this whole package and everything like that. Have you guys thought about picking a different retail packaging, something more akin to, just a stupid example, like make the retail package like 4 players with like 6 factions, so people can get into the game and then buy all the expansions separately for the people who missed out on the Kickstarter?
Well, we were trying to make it less expensive by having the core game be 4 players. And then there's the 5 to 6 player expansion, which just adds the new figures. And then you buy. And then the other thing is that everything's in those 2 packages, which is at least it is our cheapest giant fancy Sandy Petersen game we've done. It's like $80, but then all of the faction expansions, all the civs, are just that civ. So you can kind of mix and match. That was our idea behind it.
So maybe I misunderstood. So you can buy each individual faction separately as it is now?
Except for the 4 in the core game.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that. I thought you were like big box of 6 players, and then you had to get all the expansions too. So that's actually...
big box of 4 players. There's this 5 to 6 player expansion, which only adds figures, no civs.
Oh, gotcha.
2 more colors. Because as you know, the figures, it's the color, right?
Right.
You just pick the color you want.
Exactly,
right?
Which is nice.
So, and in fact, in the final game, the aliens themselves are going to be gray, and you're going to pop them into a base that is their color.
Oh, gotcha. So
you'll know what they are, and your super ships too.
I paint all my miniatures. So like, if you look at all my Cthulhu Wars factions, if I were to pull out one box, you'd see that they're all painted. So they all painted.
Well, I hope you have their windows or something be the color of their thing, because that's how you tell them apart.
I would have to figure out something. So because I love painting my stuff, so I've been.
It's not hard. All you have the detailing,
Right.
Like the racing stripes are yellow or whatever. So so there's 4 in the core games, and there's the 5 to 6 player expansion. Then you have 20 other factions that are each a little box about like this, with just the unique figures for that faction. It doesn't have the other ones, and then it's 2 it's faction card, the 2 special researches it gets, and then anything else that it has. Maybe it has an extra token or something, like how they have. So, and then we also have produced the amazing giant box of all the factions, which is empty, but it will fit all the factions in it as one box.
I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure my beleaguered shows are also looking forward to it, because I'm sure you can see how stacked up they are.
Yeah, I really wanted people to be able to move. I feel everyone's pain with Cthulhu Wars, so I wanted to move it around. But I also wanted this to be, and the figures you saw, they're not giant.
No, they're not. It's nice. They're very reasonable size, to the point where you don't feel like you need a large gaming table to play it, even as a 6-player game, which I thought was a wonderful choice on your guys' part there.
I mean, it's not as big as Cthulhu Wars or God's War. It's still fairly big. When you get you've seen the 4-player map. Obviously, the 6-player map is slightly bigger. It's a huge hexagon, right? And everyone's in the corner. And I've come up with ways of doing 7 and 8 player maps for it.
Oh, really?
So those will actually be released on our website or something.
Interesting. So that actually has me very excited, because I sometimes get 7 people at the table, and those are times where we're looking for a 7-player game, such as, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank.
Cthulhu Wars.
I got to stand up. Always Cthulhu Wars, but I mean, the game that we pull out when we're at exactly 7 is Struggle of Empires. I don't know why I drew a blank on that one. Have you ever played Struggle of Empires?
Struggle of Vampires?
Yeah, Struggle of Empires. It's a older game from like the 90s, maybe late 90s.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's one that comes out when we have exactly 7 at the table for a lot too, so we enjoy that one quite a bit at 7. So
God's War works for 7 players.
Yeah, it does.
Or 8 players.
Actually, believe it or not, since we're talking about the God's War is actually the game when we talk about Cthulhu Wars and the God's War, I actually prefer the God's War.
There's a faction that is that way, and I am always happy to hear that.
Yeah.
one of the best things ever happened in my life was I was sitting at the table with 4 of my gaming friends, and one of them talked about how God's War was his favorite game of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, is that true for everyone? And then the second guy said, no, I like Cthulhu Wars best. Third liked Planet Apocalypse, and the last one liked Hyperspace. So I was like, cool. that's the answer I like.
Right.
They each liked a different game. I mean, God's War has a lot of subtleties in it, and I think they're pretty interesting. It didn't get the traction Cthulhu Wars did for some reason. It sold well, but not as well. Maybe it's just because they think it's about Glorantha, and it is, but it's a mythological Cthulhu Wars,
Right. Well, hindsight's 2020, but I always felt that the reason why the God's War struggled is because it almost was competing with Cthulhu Wars, and I think
yes, it's very similar to
it. Well, visually, but if you ever play the game, like the phase where you have to do like the debating with the other players, and the Great Compromise, and how the map changes and everything like that, they are actually mechanically very different games. But when you just look at them visually, they're almost competing with each other. Which, me personally, if I could segue, if you're okay with that, I think that the God's War, if it ever had a smaller version, like we're talking like a Chaos in the Old World, smaller version with smaller figures, I think it could have like a second resurrection almost as a game to become popular for people.
That to my team, see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that it is huge. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm very proud of the Chaos Rift. I mean, things I've done that I think are especially good. I won't talk about the things I've done that I'm not proud of, but the Chaos Rift I thought was a really good prisoner's dilemma for the players to do.
Exactly, that is
and
a prisoner's
every
dilemma.
time you vote on it, you can point to the guy who backstabbed everyone and to the guy who was an idiot and put 6 power. It's. I mean, it's totally the prisoner's dilemma.
Very much so, and I think that's one of the things that we enjoyed so much about the game when we played it is the prisoner's dilemma. So, if I ask you 2 more questions about the God's War, these are personal, call them guilty pleasures about the God's War. I always wondered 2 things about the design about the game. Looking at the mythos and the mythology of Glorantha, did you ever think about making the game where chaos itself was versus all the other players, like a one versus many? Or did you ever possibly consider making chaos a AI-controlled mechanic for the game? Was that ever a thought process for you when you were designing it?
When I was designing it, I knew I wanted chaos to be a faction because that's how it should work. And I know that in Glorantha, sometimes chaos is against everyone else, but everyone else is also against everyone else. I did not consider, there was people at one point saying we should do a one against many version, where everyone's weak, but the one thing is there. And so my plan was to do that, but actually not in the God's War. But original plan was going to have 3 other games based in the first, second, and third age of Glorantha. And in the first stage, it was going to be a one against many. One player was Nice Lord, the shining one, and everyone else were different factions trying to kill them. So I was actually going to try to do that. Was going to satisfy my desire for that, and so that was there. I have, because I spent a lot of time working on games that use AI, like Age of Empires. I am super mistrustful of AI in board games because, as you know, when you ever let the computer make a decision, it always makes the wrong one.
Very true, and that kind of does make it a little more challenging of a mechanic. But it's just something to me, like I said, a totally guilty pleasure, just because looking at the mythos and how things were, it was everybody fighting against chaos because chaos was trying to end everything. So I always thought, that'd be kind of cool if you can actually bring that into the God's War board game itself.
Yes, it would be. And my favorite solo games are for, let's see, are from Victory Point Games, the State of Siege games. I love Victory Point Games. And sadly, like, We Must Tell the Emperor is one of their best games, and it's out of print. And apparently the designer now hates Victory Point Games, so you can't get a copy of it. But that was great. We were playing Japan, trying not to do what Japan did in the war. That's pretty fun. They also, sadly, I found out that the Habsburg Twilight is no longer available, which I wanted to get. But the Ottoman Sunset's there. Where you're playing the Turks in World War I. trying to not lose the Sultan. But those are, but it's I think it's still available. Anyway, I do play solo games because I play those, but they have kind of an AI, but it's a very simple one. Here's my AI story for why I don't trust AI. I was actually partnering with Dan Bunton, then now Danielle Barry. She's dead now, but but we were doing the game uh, um, Command HQ for Microprose. That was pretty much the first RTS game. The first RTS game, at least the military one. And so to test it, to make sure that the modems worked, because we wanted this to be playable head-to-head on modems, which almost no games did. Really, that didn't happen until Doom, right? But so we sent it to a whole bunch of people to try it, and we only gave them the World War I scenario. And the way the World War I scenario worked that we sent out to them is Danny put picked all the German units were given a place to go. And what they would do when the game started, it was RTS, right? They would move forward till they got to the end of their planned movement, and then they would stop and they would never move again. And in the game, you only fought when your units were overlapping another unit going in to fight them. Okay, that was it. That's all they did, because we didn't care about strategy. We just wanted them to tell us if the game worked by modem. And we had dozens of people tell us that they couldn't beat the AI. Yes, the AI that moves forward and then stops, and that's all it does. I guess they gave up before they found out it stopped, and that was bad for me, because I wanted to get Danny to like incorporate some robust AI for the enemies, and he just laughed me to scorn. If I can do this and they don't know it's not AI, I don't need to do a good AI. So that was sad.
That's awesome. Well, Sandy, I appreciate your time. I know I've taken a lot of your time, and we've been able to talk a lot of awesome projects. I think you said some things that will make a lot of people excited. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
I appreciate your channel, and I watch it extensively. And if people are interested in my channel, it's called Sandy of Cthulhu on YouTube, and it has a lot of weird things, such as horror movie suggestions that you might find useful.
I've actually got a few good horror movie suggestions out of it, so yes, it is. And where can people find you on the internet? Obviously, Discord for Petersen Games. Anywhere else people can find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter and I am on YouTube. And although I have a Facebook account, I check it like once every 3 or 4 months. So while there's people that maintain it for me and do things on it, it's not me. Because there's only so much social media you can do without going crazy. So
I'm not a social media person at all, so I can greatly appreciate that. But I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great evening, Sandy, and thank you very much.
Okay.